I am always excited to see when my friends do well, especially those who I think are smarter than me and who are way more prolific with writing books. And my friend David Limbaugh, he has a number of political books, but really in the past few years, he's been writing a lot of stuff, whether it's on New Testament or Life of Christ. He's got a brand new book out that I think is every parent's dream because he authored it with his oldest child. And it's called The Resurrected Jesus, the Church in the New Testament. And David Limbaugh authored this with his daughter, Kristen Limbaugh Bloom, which first off, David joins us via Skype. David, congratulations on this book. But I have to say, congratulations on raising the type of daughter who co-authors a book like this with you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
I want to get into all of this because I love the way that you look at these. I love the way that you look at stories in the Bible and you also look at these issues. And I know this one is definitely something where I haven't started it yet, admittedly, but I am. This is my next book to read. And I'm very excited to read it because I know that you draw a lot of parallels with what we're dealing with and how that applies to, our modern culture right now. I want to take it to this because I had written a piece about this last night. And this kind of, I think, gets into, and I'm going to bring this back to your book. I wrote a piece on Lindsey Graham and this bill that he proposed this week in the Senate, limiting abortions to 15 weeks. And I took a look at your Twitter account because, I always do whenever I have people that are coming on, just in case you tweet something crazy right before the show starts,
I know. Yeah.
And I love what you said here because you really took Lindsey Graham to task. And I feel like this bill has spawned a couple of different reactions within the Republican Party. You had said that you asked him whether or not, because it's a limitation at 15 weeks, you asked him whether or not his decision was based on the leftist European practice of limiting it at 15 weeks and whether or not there's, kind of other things that he follows leftist Europeans on. But then you added, conservatives just won this constitutional point and now they offer to voluntarily surrender it. You say, I swear I'm amazed at the lack of principle and utter cluelessness. You say not to mention how out of touch they are with their own base. I wanted to ask you about this issue because we just got it moved to the States. Where does this move like this? I love your dog in the background. Where does this bill take us?
I can't control him. I don't understand. Why is Lindsey? I've liked Lindsey. It's not like I'm trying to trash him.
Right.
But this is a gratuitous gift, and it looks like it's political. And he too often looks political. This is about life. And one of the other tweets I said, he said he arbitrarily cut it off at 15 weeks or 16 because the baby feels pain. But this isn't about pain as important as it is. It's about life. The baby's alive at 0 weeks, not 16 weeks, not 15 weeks, not only at 15 and 16. Yeah. And the pain, by the way, if he's going to choose that marker, I've read 6 weeks they can feel pain in some studies. Who knows? But I don't know what it is. But it's an arbitrary marker. Why is he federalizing this anyway? If you're going to federalize it, then let's really go all the way and say the Constitution guarantees the right to life throughout, if you want to do that. But that's not what the decision says. The Dobbs decision says it returns it to the states. So get out of the way, federal government. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
And by the way, this reaching across the aisle, which is, by the way, kind of analogous to the principles in this book, every time conservatives reach across the aisle, we move the football closer to the left. They talk that we're extremists. We haven't become more conservative. You're not as old as I am, since Reagan. We're the same conservatives. They have got increasingly Marxist. Now they're all AOC. I have a lot of Democrat friends. None of them can claim they aren't supporting lockstep what she's doing. So we're in a war. I don't believe that we have a moral duty to reach out. It wouldn't work anyway. Jesus, by the way, didn't come. He's always co-opted by these people. He didn't come to unite. He said, I come to divide. Mother and father, brother and sister. Why? Not because he's not a unifier in spirit. I mean, he wants to unify the church, and Paul wants him to unify the church, Christians, but because he represents truth. And he knows that Satan is the ruler of this world. And by the way, sorry if I sound like a crazy man, but the Democratic Party is under the spell of the evil one. Because
you don't at all.
You can't promote the kind of objective evil they are. Celebration of murdering babies, mutilation of children, the denial of the confusion of gender, on purpose against God's created order. I created them man and woman, I created them. And demolition of the law, of the rule of law and order, two-tier justice system. It is so outrageous what's going on. I can't believe anyone anywhere in the United States can believe this is happening.
This is why I'm so excited to read your new book, co-authored with your daughter, The Resurrected Jesus, because you touched on something, and this is why I wanted to start with this Lindsey Graham piece, and you went exactly where I was wanting to go. Because reaching across the aisle, it always seems as though we have to come with an offering of a principle sacrificed. Okay, well, we'll move from this, and we'll go to 15 weeks, and then we'll go to this. And as you note, I mean, there's nothing in the Bible that says, half good's better than no good. Right? There's nothing lukewarm in that call to follow, what we're supposed to follow, either as people of faith or even as logic.
Indeed, in the book of Revelation, it's great you use that term, lukewarm. Jesus condemns one of the churches for being lukewarm. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like these mealy-mouthed people, and he wasn't. These people say, God of the Old Testament mean, Jesus wonderfully nice, Paul mean again. No, Jesus was very stern about the truth. He didn't mince any words. But here's the problem with what Graham is doing and what so many establishment Republicans have often done. They misread their base. They misread. Can't they see what gave rise to Trump in the first place? This very kind of thing. What he's doing is looking at the polls, the political winds, and misreading them, by the way. Even then, he shouldn't do it. But he is, on the matter of life, the ultimate moral issue, he shouldn't look at the polls. But he is looking at the polls, or he's anticipating the polls hurting the Republican Party in the November elections because the Democrats are all up in arms about the abortion thing. Let me tell you, that's not the case. What he needs to understand is our base is pro-life through and through. In fact, I can't believe some of the people standing up alongside with him, some of the people who I have total respect for, I won't mention names, I'm shocked. Trump understands the base. We are the base. We're pro-life. You're not going to win any independent. Anybody that's independent these days is half nuts. I mean, how can you be independent with what's going on?
I agree with you. They're half nuts. I agree with you on that. Talking with David Limbaugh.
Yeah. So anyway, let's have some cojones and do what we're supposed to do instead of always. These guys never win, and when they do win, the Bush years and all that, they never advance the football because all they do is try to appease man instead of appease God, appease the other side instead of listening to their base. Didn't
Trump show that you could grow the base without having to, compromise principle like in this fashion?
He convinced you and me, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I was originally for Cruz. I didn't think he was conservative. And then, boy, as soon as Hillary was nominated, it's all binary for me, and I'm all in Trump. But I think he became a conservative because he realized these liberals, New York liberals he palled around with all his life, they weren't the good guys. He found out very quickly. So he then began to learn. He was a quick study. I think he's a full-blown conservative now.
I do too. I agree.
Yes.
I completely agree. You touch on this. We're talking with David Limbaugh and his new book, The Resurrected Jesus, co-authored with his daughter, Kristen Limbaugh Bloom. And I'm so excited to read this. And I love the fact that you do touch on, from what I have, like I said, I haven't read it. I have perused it. I've gone through and because which has made me very excited to read it. The woke churches. Because this is an issue. Everything with politics is downstream from culture, which is something that we've all said over and over again. We've had an issue even in my own church with some of the wokery. I think that our church leadership has dialed it back a little bit because they heard a lot from not just us, but a lot of people in the church. But I've heard stories, David, as I'm sure you have as well, of people having to look for new churches to go to because it got more about wokery than it did about Christ. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on all this.
Well, it amazes me that inside the church, especially younger pastors and staff, they're increasingly left. They're indoctrinated in the seminaries, many of them, and the culture is so powerful and the peer pressure. Now, instead of the church being a flagship for biblical morality, it tries to please the culture and conform to the culture rather than influencing the culture to conform to absolute truth and biblical principles. The Methodist Church, which I've been a member of forever, is going to split because the American Methodists are so radically liberal, so woke. Ironically, the Africans outnumbers 9 million. They've kept the church together because they're conservative. Isn't amazingly disappointing. America's the beacon of hope, the beacon of freedom. We understand constitutional republicanism, and now other nations are ahead. We're forfeiting all this right in front of our eyes, and it kills me. We'll never give up on America, by the way. But these churches, there's a lot of threats from within, and if you don't adhere to biblical truth, there's no point in having a church.
Exactly, and that's really the identity. I think that's the biggest way to defeat all of that critical race theory nonsense, all the other division that we see being pushed, is because, and you talk a little bit about identity in this book, Christian biblical identity. That's the only identity. That is are you of the kingdom or not? That is the identity.
Our identity as Christians is found in Christ. God wonderfully made us. He knows every hair on our head. In my case, that's fewer than yours. Quite a bit fewer. And so it's easier for him to know me. You're more complex. See, you got more hair. So
I don't know if that's how that works.
Your husband, Chris, he's got hair. God's got a real challenge with Chris.
I mean, man.
Down here.
Yeah, he's got all that back down there too.
But no, that's so true. What was the first part before you said identity? I wanted to.
No, that's where our identity is, as children of the kingdom, and that's ultimately the route through which everybody should be focusing on to defeat the CRT, which says no, your identity is bound in your ethnicity or in your chosen identity.
In identity politics, we can identify as a man or a woman, and now that is so narcissistic when you think about it. Our identities in Christ. They encourage people just to get your identity from your skin color or for your gender. It's pretty sad, but this church, this morale, this biblical, these woke ideas in the church. I really, it's hard for me to understand how churches can embrace them, and why do you even want to bother? Why would you go to church? I mean, it's time consuming. If all you're going to do is try to please other men, there's no point in it, and it's really a betrayal. It's a betrayal of what Christ did for us on the cross. And I'll never understand how these churches can substitute these pagan religions and syncretism and substitute it for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And they got to live with themselves, but I'm not going to participate.
Let me ask you this. We're talking with David Limbaugh in his new book, The Resurrected Jesus, The Church in the New Testament. Do you see I keep hearing stories, I keep hearing rumors of Gen Z maybe being more conservative. Do you see the pendulum ever swinging back?
I actually think there is something to that. I keep hearing that too. But we have to remember the liberals wholly own the institutions of our culture, the educational institutions, even the churches, as you were saying. And so these kids are getting indoctrinated, and it's hard for parents to compete because kids are influenced more by their peers than their parents in these kinds of issues. And so you got to be a really strong parent, a strong influencer. Your kids have to be obedient, whatever, and that doesn't happen very often. I'm Kristen. I got lucky with, she's the oldest. Who knows whether the other four, and I'm not being facetious. There's strong pressures on kids not to be Christian, not to be conservative.
I agree with that completely. And that's why I love the fact that your daughter co-wrote this book with you. I mean, that's an amazing thing as a parent to see something like that.
Very gratifying. She has been a spirit-filled prayer warrior from the beginning. We sent them to Christian schools, and she never had doubts like I did, coming to the faith kicking and screaming. So I asked her if she would write this book with me. And add prayers in addition to contributing to the text. She has such a facility for prayer. Yeah. And I think it brings the reader closer to God, closer to Christ, and helps the reader interact with Scripture. One thing I wanted to say to you, the thing I lost my train of thought on earlier, I think that the liberals always have the advantage. It's tougher being a conservative. As Rush used to say, it's easy to be a liberal because you can say things and everybody, the media will champion you and all that. But when we don't believe in preaching from the pulpit. We want to keep politics out, we conservatives. Liberals politicize everything. However, here's where liberals win on this point, or have an advantage. When our pastors preach from the pulpit, they should be preaching biblical morality, which includes celebration of life, which means being against abortion. That is not political. That
True.
is moral, biblical morality, and yet they have defined it as. So then we're preaching. No, we're not. So I'm all for, if you want to define politics as anything that is Christian conservative, which they do, by the way, we're all domestic terrorists, then yes, we should be political. But that's a false definition as they distort the language in this Orwellian dystopia we live in today.
Yeah.
But that's not, but they politicize everything from the pulpit
get-go.
and everywhere
Absolutely.
else.
Talking our friend David Limbaugh and his new book, The Resurrected Jesus. And David, I know I texted you after this. We all loved your brother. I mean, he created my ability to work and do what I do. And we love you as well. And you guys, you're the Limbaugh family, just nonstop contributing to American culture. And we are grateful that you're continuing that. God love you.
Thank you so much. And same here. You've been so great and a good friend throughout. And I appreciate what you do so much. And you're so good at what you do, so uniquely good.
Well, we thank you.
And Rush, by the way, opened so many doors for me. I wouldn't be doing any of this. It doesn't matter how good you are. I'm not saying I'm good or bad, but you got to have a platform. You got to have a platform. And so I wanted to help get Kristen a jump start. She's already writing op-eds for Fox, but I wanted to help her in the book writing business.
We need smart, beautiful Christian conservative women, and she checks all those boxes for sure. We have to get rolling. We're short on time. We'd love to have you back, and we're going to talk UFC next time you're on.
Absolutely.
We're UFC fans. Good to see you, my friend. God bless you. Congratulations to you and your daughter.
Thanks. Tell Chris hi.
Will do.